everybody. As you can see, we're not at the barber. We are at home with my dear wife. And yes, let's just make sure. Oh, there we go. I always have to make sure that it's on because we once did a whole show and it wasn't live or there was a black screen at different times. So, yeah. Now, this week's Parsha is, I normally ask this question to Ilya.
Parshas Bo.
Exactly.
Boy.
And let's just go through. First of all, welcome everybody if you're new here or if you are a returning
Subscriber.
viewer. Thank you for being here. And yeah, we were doing a little earlier in the week than normal. Hopefully, we'll keep it that way. But so what we do is we first go through the parsha really quickly, and then we talk. We just go through it in a nutshell, and then we go talk about some interesting points, stuff that you. Chances are you haven't heard them ever, or maybe you have, but interesting points on the parsha. So let's go. Boy in a nutshell. The name of the parsha boy means to come because Hashem told Moshe to come to Parai, which is an interesting language. Normally, you would say go to Parai. There's different times when Hashem says come, different times when Hashem says go, but yeah. And the last three of the previous parsha we had the seven makos, and now the last three, which are arbe, which are locusts, grasshoppers, then darkness, very, very, very thick, palpable darkness, and then the death of the firstborn. And Hashem tells Jewish people to start the first mitzvah actually that the Jewish people are given is that to follow the calendar, to have and based on the moon. And the Yidden are also told to bring a carbon pesach, being either a lamb or a baby goat, and they were told to have the blood put on the doorposts. So Hashem should pass over the houses, the Jewish houses, right? The houses of Bnei Israel when the firstborn are dying, and then they're supposed to eat the carbon pesach that night with matzah and merorim, as it said, right? Bitter herbs. And then it was actually like a wrap. It wasn't like what we have today, which is
Cardboard.
Yeah. And finally, Paro is scared for his own life. He's a firstborn, and he goes looking for Moshe, and he basically throws them out of Mitzrayim. He wants them to leave in the middle of the night, but Moshe says, no, we're going to leave in the middle of the day where everyone can see. We're not going to be like thieves in the night. They didn't even have enough time to bake proper bread, and they got matzah. And before they go, they ask all the Egyptians for their gold, for their garments, which is the promise that Hashem gave to Avraham, that the Yidden will leave Mitzrayim with a lot of wealth. Now the children of Israel are commanded to, Bnei Israel, now the firstborn, right, are given to Hashem. There's an idea of pidyon haben. And every single year we're supposed to have Pesach, where we get rid of chametz, eat matzah, tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And it also talks about putting tefillin on our arm and head. Us people, the males, not the womans. And yeah, and they put it on in order to be a reminder of the commitment to Hashem, and that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's the nutshell. Now, first of all, go watch last year's go watch last year's video on Parshas Bo. There's some stuff which we're not going to discuss in this video. Why are you smiling?
Continue.
Because
it's round 2, cycle 2.
Yes, this is round 2, and so there's some stuff that we're not going to mention in this video because it's already been mentioned. This is already round 2. So the first plague is the plague of Arbe, plague of locusts. And there's a few things we brought up last year, but here's a really interesting story brought in the Sefer Kavayasha of the Arizal, and how the mitzvah of tzedakah saved Tzfas and all the surrounding area from a major plague of locusts. What happened? So he was sitting in a field with his students.
The Arizal?
The Arizal sitting in the field with his students, and he's actually sitting in that field was buried one of the Nevi'im, Hosea, and he's teaching. The Arizal is teaching, secrets of the Torah, and all of a sudden he stops and he says, "We have to get tzedakah right away for a certain poor man who lives nearby, because he's crying about how poor he is, and his davening is going straight to Hashem. And Lamaila, there's a kitrug. There's this, there's a judgment against people in the area that no one has Rahman, no one has mercy on him, no one's helping him." And they said that because of that, there's going to come a big swarm of locusts, and they're going to eat everything, in the entire area of Tzfas and the surrounding places. Now, the Arizal says, all of you right away, whatever you can give. And they got money together. He gives the money to one of his, the poor person's name was Yaakov. He gives one of his students, his name is Yitzchak Cohen. It sounds like, the guy down the block. But I think was it Yitzchak Cohen? Yeah, Yitzchak Cohen, it says. And he went to he tells him to take the money and go visit this guy. Yeah? Why are you laughing again? Did I say something funny? I don't understand what you're saying. You want to text me?
Yeah, my phone's over there.
Okay, so anyway, he says to get all this money. He says to give the money to this Yaakov, and he goes and Yitzchak goes to see what's going on, to give him the money. Now he sees that he's crying, so he asks him, "Why are you crying?" He says because he had only one jug to fill water with, and that jug broke, and now he doesn't know what he's going to do. He has no money to buy another one, and just his poverty is breaking him. And so Rabbi Yitzchak gave him the money, and Rabbi Yaakov was so happy, and he gave him a bracha. And he came back, and the Rizal said, "Okay, the gzeira is finished. Wow. The decree was nullified." But all of a sudden, there's a huge wind, and they see swarms of locusts. So the Rizal says, "Don't worry about it." And it's just because that the gzeira had already started, but nothing's going to happen. And that's what happened. The wind just carried them all the way into the water, to the ocean, and nothing had happened.
Wow.
There was an interesting story about the Arizal. And the end of the Sefer, he says, and you have to see from here, we have to be very careful about taking care of the poor of our areas, because Hashem is Karv Hashem Hashem is close to those who are broken, and that includes people who are poor and who are down in their luck, and Hashem listens to what they to their cries. Yeah. Now, here's some interesting stuff about Choshech, about Makas Choshech. In Medrash Shmos Rabbah, it says that the darkness was thick like a dinar, like a certain coin. And what does that mean? right? Like, what does it mean that it was dark like a coin? So there's the Torah Tamima actually says that, and the way he says it is very interesting. He says, if not for the fact that I'm hesitant because of how I'm, because it doesn't say this anywhere, I would say that the darkness, Cheshech, wasn't actually darkness outside, but rather it was a growth, like a cataract over the eyes of the Egyptians, and it was very, very thick to the point where they couldn't see anything. Very interesting take on what Lagas Cheshech was. Not exactly the Pashta Pshat. Not exactly a simple explanation. Now the Ralbag says that it was actually like a really thick darkness with like, imagine like poisonous air, like smoky, like and because of that, they actually had to cover their nose and mouth. Now, it's a little bit hard to understand this because how would they survive? Yeah, imagine a fog, like a really contaminated fog, like how, people, they show in some of the movies how, like, they have to be inside, they can't go outside, otherwise they die. But and that paired with darkness. The problem with that is, how long can you go without? Well, right, exactly. But how long can you go without air through your nose or your mouth? So either it was a miracle that Hashem, because it's extremely painful, it was a miracle that Hashem kept them alive in order to feel that pain, or I don't know. But that's the only thing I can think of. But now the Aksava Kabbalah says that the darkness wasn't just darkness, and that's why when it says that they couldn't move, they say the darkness was so thick that they couldn't move. If you were standing, you couldn't sit. If you were sitting, you couldn't stand. But he explains that actually the reason was because it wasn't just darkness. It was they heard scary sounds. There were scary sounds that made them petrified. And when someone's extremely frightened with absolute terror, they can't even move. And it says that they saw that bad malachim, whatever that means, right? The scary malachim were showing their faces to them. So they saw and heard terrifying sounds and terrifying things. And so they were so scared that they couldn't even move.
The MITZVAH, right?
Yeah, the MITZVAH. Yeah. And in the Sefer Amloyes, it brings from the Sefer of Tedel Derech something, an additional thing. It says that the darkness wasn't actual darkness. What was it? It was an extreme light. Now, it was an extreme light, just like bats, right? They could only see in night. In the daytime, it's too bright, they can't see. It's the same thing. Hashem revealed a very special holy light. And because of that, the Mitzrayim, they couldn't open their eyes because of how intense that light was. But the Yidden were able to, in the Schos of Moshe and Aaron, they were able to. And actually, it says that some of the Jewish people, they actually didn't make it out, right? The people who didn't deserve to. So them also, the light consumed them, and it was too much for them, and they weren't able to come out. And they perished in Mitzrayim, unfortunately. So yeah, just a bunch of different opinions on what the darkness actually was.
It's interesting. Like, can they all be correct, or they're just opinions? Like, these are chachamim. No, who had their opinions?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. Like we see by the Torah Tamima, he says that according to a certain medrash, the way he believes he can explain it is a certain way. It's a good question in general when you have different opinions on what happened. Right? We all know that there was a plague of darkness. And the question now, with all these different opinions, what the plague of darkness was, what actually happened here. Now, some things are compatible, right? So some things like the fact that there was darkness and there was also a thick darkness that was contaminated. And there was also sounds and sights that were very frightening. All those things go together. Now, was it light or was it actual darkness? Well, how does that go together? I mean, even that you could say can go together. Like it was so bright that for them it was a thick darkness. But then, for example, the fact that it was a cataract,
That could also go together technically. It's super bright, but your eyes are completely shaded.
Right, but that wasn't what caused it. Whatever the case is, these are good questions. There's the idea of Shivim Panam Latera and Elu Elu Divrei Kim Chaim, but at the end of the day, we know that there was a Makas Cheshech, a plague of darkness. Now, what it exactly was, there are different opinions. It's an interesting question philosophically how to reconcile different and sometimes contradicting opinions, right? Yeah. Now I want to just talk about. If you don't mind holding this for a second. So actually, the title of this video was "The Silence of the Dogs," because
Whether they didn't bark.
Yeah, exactly, because it says that they didn't bark at the Jewish people. The dogs didn't bark at the Jewish people. So the question is,
When they were leaving or in general?
When they left, the entire night, they didn't bark at all. So what's the big deal? So there's a few reasons why this is a big deal. Why is this even a miracle?
Well, anyone who has a dog or has had a dog knows that they bark at thin air. Dogs bark all the time, so just that is a miracle.
Right.
I'm saying that in itself, like they literally all the time bark, randomly. They smell something from down the block or whatever it is.
Right. So you're saying dogs are always barking, and the fact that they didn't bark at all
just by
is
itself.
A miracle.
Yeah.
Right. So that makes sense. But he's saying what's so special? Like, meaning there are times. I mean, or people, I'm sure, in our neighborhood who have dogs. There are times when we don't hear those dogs. Right. So the question is, what was so special over here that they didn't bark? So he says that there's a few reasons. One of them is because in general, what was happening then? All the firstborn were dying. So there were a bunch of corpses all over the place. And dogs, they bark. Dogs bark whenever there's trouble. Right? It even says that when the Malach HaMavis, when there's dogs barking a lot, there could be a sign that the Malach HaMavis is around, that there might be, death going on. Whatever the case is, dogs have this sense, that we might not have. And so when death is going on, when there's corpses, normally the dog's behavior would be to bark. Especially like you're saying, they even bark at thin air, right?
I mean, seemingly to us.
Right, exactly. And also because they were getting ready and they had their sticks in their hands, and it's normal for dogs to bark when they see people with sticks in their hands. That's another reason. Also, normally after Chatzais, after midnight, that's the time when dogs bark. That's what the Cheskuni says. And also the Jews were busy packing up and getting ready to leave. And when there's a lot of movement going on, it's another reason for dogs when there's commotion, it's another reason for dogs to be really to bark and to go along with it. And now it also says that by Makas Bacharis at that exact time, when there was a cry throughout the entire Egypt, there was noise all over the place. Everyone was crying and yelling and shouting, because they were losing, people were dying, and it was again commotion. And nevertheless, the dogs didn't bark. And another thing that's very interesting, he says that actually it says the words L'chol b'nei Yisrael twice. It says L'chol b'nei Yisrael yechaz karav l'shenei, and L'chol b'nei Yisrael haya arba mishveisam, by the plague of chayshech, of darkness. So now, the Jews, we said earlier, the Jewish people were able to see where the Egyptians had their valuables. So later they could say when they left, "No, I saw that you have this and this."
Wasn't those valuables, didn't they originally belong to the Yidden? Weren't they stolen from them? I heard that somewhere, but I don't know where.
It could be. Also, they owed them money for enslaving them unjustly.
For what, 400 years?
Well, it was actually less than 400 years in actuality, but still, it doesn't matter. It was a long time.
Well, it was a process to get.
But the point is that when they left Mitzrayim, they took a lot of the valuables of the Mitzrayim, and the Mitzrayim, some of them said, "Oh no, I don't have this and this," and the Jew was able to say, "You did." Now the thing is that just like over here, because it says L'chol b'nei Yisrael, just like over here, the dogs didn't bark. Also, then, even though the dogs apparently weren't affected by Makas Cheshech, they still didn't bark at the Jewish people when they were in the Egyptians' property, which is also very interesting.
Not that it would have made a difference. They were frozen, no? Weren't they frozen during Makas?
Yeah, so that's the thing. It couldn't move, but I don't know if it was throughout the entire Makas Cheshech or only through part of it. Either way, it's just, it's another thing that, an interesting
perspective
tidbit that it was also not only during Makas Becheres, but also during Makas Cheshech that the dogs hadn't barked. Okay, there's one last thing. This is going to be a short one, but there's something really, really beautiful from the Rebbe regarding when Hashem tells Moshe, boil Pari, one of the first words of the Parshah, right? So Hashem says like this. Rashi says like this. Boil Pari, Rashi explains v'hisrabai, and warn him. So the question is, why does Rashi have to say that? Right? Why does Rashi have to say and warn him? Obviously, in the words coming up, it's easy to tell that Hashem is telling Moshe to warn Pari that this and this is going to happen. So the Rebbe explains that there's two possible things here. There are some times when Moshe is just coming to Pari to tell him this is going to happen. He's stating a fact. And he's just relaying a message. This is going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. And then there are times that Moshe Rabbeinu is warning Pari and saying that this is something that's dependent on you. Sometimes you can avoid this happening by some of the makkahs. He's saying you can avoid this happening if you let the Jewish people go, if you let the Bnei Yisrael go. So Rashi is saying v'hisrabai, and warn him. Now, why is this so important? Because if you look, it seems that Pari didn't have a choice. It seems, right, that Hashem made Pari, he made his heart heavy. And it even says, Asher hisalalti, and Rashi explains what does hisalalti mean? Mitzrayim, that I played with Mitzrayim. Like I acted as if there was a choice, but really there was no choice. In other words, that it was his heart was 100% hardened. So then the question is, and how can Hashem say, how can Rashi say to Hisrba and warn him? How does warning?
This is before which makkah? Before
Makas Arba. Point is, how can you say that this is a warning when Pari doesn't really have a choice? And so the answer is that really, no matter how hard Hashem made Pari's heart, there's something ein davar emet b'nei tshuva. No matter what, a person can always do tshuva, and that's what it's also. And it's a very famous thing that when it speaks about how if somebody says echtav ashuv, I'm going to sin and then I'm going to do tshuva, ein maspikin biyadei. It means they don't help him. They don't help him do tshuva. But im docha kasha, if he goes and he pushes, and it's possible. There's nothing to stand in front of tshuva, which means even though seemingly Pari didn't have a choice, still he was punished. And if you get punished for something, it means you were able to. If you have no choice, how can you get punished? You have to have free choice. That means that he had free choice. He was able to. And no matter how difficult it was, no matter how impossible it may have seemed, no matter how daunting it may have been, he still was able to. And if that's the case for Pari, then how much more so is that for our fellow Jews? And this is a lesson, I was saying, it's a lesson. Sometimes you see someone and you say, it's too far gone, it's lost cause. There's no way, there's no hope. And from here we see a lesson that if Pari, who was an extremely wicked person, idol worshiper, and just a horrible person, and still he was able if he really wanted to do teshuvah, and we see actually later on, according to some opinions, he went to Nineveh and he did do teshuvah. He was the same king. Paro was the king in Nineveh that warned him they did teshuvah. But if that's possible, so then we can't give up on our own brother, and we have to always do our best to be makarev and to bring our brothers and sisters closer, no matter how lost they might seem. Yeah. Do you want to add anything, maybe?
Paro didn't die in the end from Makas B'charetz.
So there are opinions that say that Paro survived, and he survived in order for him to witness the devastation, and see how everything was lost. Yeah, so there's opinion that said that he went to Nineveh. Guys, there's so much more. I would say go to go learn. Just open up Sfarim, Yam Leis, Ezer Satira, Mikroish Gedoles, the Ramban, so many. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We hope you found this informative and
entertaining.
You watched it enough times, huh? And smash the like button, subscribe,
turn on those notifications.
And we're really happy you're here. This is obviously a much shorter week, but even though it's Monday night, we're still going to say good Shabbos. Or until next time. Yeah. What do you want to say? Oh yeah. We want to dedicate this to bettering the schus of this. The Torah should be the merit of the soldiers. They should be protected. The hostages should come back right away. We send back. There should be an end to this war. Mashiach should come right now. Please consider supporting this channel. There'll be a link. I think there already is a link in the bottom.
For Patreon? Ilya needs to come say that.
Oh, there was just a
comment.
Yeah, the silence of dogs in Egypt. Yes, I guess you just came on. We were speaking about the silence of the dogs in Egypt. We were discussing why that was a miracle. Yes, the silence of the dogs in Egypt. Good guess. I believe this is actually Nissi, if I'm not correct. Anyway.
If you are correct.
Did I say if I'm not correct?
Yeah.
If I'm correct, this is Nissi Russell. Shout
Welcome.
Out. But anyway, guys, thank you for being here. Have a beautiful week. Have a good Shabbos, and until next time, love you guys. Yeah, I was right. Bye-bye.